Ekuebu. Come on in the house. Nimi, welcome. I'm Queen Mother Imaku. In a while. I know I do this thing where I'm on and then I'm out. And I'm glad to be with you all this evening. On a Sunday evening. Yes, it's late. And I originally planned to come on a lot earlier. But you know, I've been working on a lot of different things. And I had planned to, you know, every day is just different. You get up, you have all these plans, things happen because life be life, you know. So that's exactly what's going on with me. Life has been life in a good way. We've had a lot of change since the last time that we've been together. And I actually was going to just do this as a recording so that way I wouldn't have to deal with conversation and so forth, but I didn't think that was necessarily fair. So please share that we're on the air with you all night. I know I always say I'm not going to be long and then it gets drawn out, right? But, you know, let me take a moment and just share it in some rooms. Joanne, how are you? It's good to see you. I caught you the other night, a little bit of you before I knocked out. Hoping all is well. Are you still making your trips to the water? I'm talking about the water tonight. Please share. Giving thanks. You know, I'm just so very grateful truly for being alive. We experience so many things, and even though things don't always go the way you expect them to go, the fact is when you can say you're still here and you can glean the lessons from what you've been through, then that's a blessing. That's everything. Yes. I'm hoping that you've had wonderful things happen for you. You're in a drought. Lack of rain? Wow. I hope that gets resolved for you. I mean, let's pray the rain to come down. For those of us who are water people, then we certainly have our knowledge of how to do that. And so I'm just praying that the rain goes up your way, and then also that everybody is able to appreciate the water, because you know the saying, you never appreciate the water until the well runs dry. And so if nothing else, it's a reminder of being in tune with nature, being appreciative of nature, and yeah. Okay, yes. Okay, so sharing. Hope you like that track that I made. This is called Nefret. I hope you enjoyed that. Give thanks. Okay, so what has been going on with you all as I am catching up here? And, you know, because I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything. Let's see, I was sharing. Yes. Okay, let's go. I think let's see what chill brings us. Oh, I don't like that. Let's see what lo-fi brings. Definitely not that. I'm gonna put my track back on. Who's here? Who else is here? And I still haven't shared a single thing. I'm a little out of practice here. Okay. Here we go. Volume down. Okay. If you go to my website, you'll see that I have new colors. If you actually all over my social media, I've made changes, and that's to reflect the changes in my life. And so let's see. Let's go to groups and do some quick sharing. You know, I belong to way too many groups here on Facebook. How many of you have a whole bunch of different groups and you don't even deal with them? They just seem like a good idea at the time, right? Which ones are you supposed to? Like what, 2.5 months maybe? Tomorrow I'm back in the recording studio. There we go. Share those. Okay. And let me just share it to a few folks. Just a couple more. We're going to talk about life path stuff tonight. And I think that's enough. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, you know, let me start. And let me also quickly call in all of my guardians, including my ancestors, guardians of all of my traditions, all of my spiritual teachers, everyone who is part of my spiritual crew, to form a hedge of protection around me. And I'm grateful for them for being in my life, very present, and for all that they have done, and those who are guides, and just thank you. Thank you. You know, it's said that if you take care of your crew, then they'll take care of you. And the biggest part of that is living right. Yes? Okay. Got your notebook, Joanne? Yeah, you know, I've had so many people say to me, you know, when you're on, I always have a notebook. The people who call me, they'll say, you know, because if they're into spiritual culture, then they'll say, I usually have a notebook handy when we talk. So that leads into the discussion that we're going to have tonight about where I've been, where I am, where I'm going, and also where you are. Are you on your path. I know I've talked about that before, and the importance of being way, one with the one with your divine self, aligned with your divorce. Are you living the life you're supposed to be living? I 2 years ago went to a colleague and had a very elaborate reading done. And that's because I just felt like I was just so off. And I've felt this way before. And I have to say that I also had another colleague that did a reading for me back in 2019. And with all the turmoil that followed, well, that was going on in my life at the time, and everything that followed, I kind of side, although my ancestors found a way to pull me back, and then my guardians, especially for those who have my head, they specialize in getting you back on track. But the main thing is you have to want to be there. You have to be aware of it, and then also be willing to make the changes to get yourself back. Well, let me just tell you, the reading I had 2 years ago, this brother said to me, Queen Mother, you're very well respected, and you're on your stuff. You know a lot. You've experienced a lot. You're an expert in your field. But you wanted to know if you were on point with where you are in your life. And the answer is no. Because your path is here, but you're supposed to be here. And he said it was about the ATR choice that I had made, which is really what I wanted to know. Was I living out the correct belief system or systems? Now, before anybody gets upset, I want to make sure you understand I'm not knocking the Kemetic faith. I'm not. And I've shared with you all before that this is not where I originally intended to be. I was trying to find the Orishas and the Loa. And we recently had a loss in the community. I know people were looking for me to make a comment about the fact that we lost Baba Heru Ankh Ra Simaj Sepata, who was responsible for resurrecting the Ankh-carrying tradition for priesthood. Now it's not even a thing. Most people go and just get somebody to have an Ankh made for them and don't understand the tradition, don't understand that it's something to be earned, and that it's not just some big old hunk of jewelry. Although, if you don't know what to do with it as a healing instrument, then it is just a big old hunk of jewelry. But that's for another time. When Baba Heru passed, and I knew he was sick, and quite frankly, he sounded like he was ready to go. No, he was ready to go. I mean, last time I spoke to him, he was ready, and had a lot of dismay about the current condition of the Kemetic community, and wondered if I had any hope for it. And I said, yes, I do, but I understood what he was saying, because social media has dragged down all earth-based religions, all indigenous paths, all of our ancestral indigenous paths, because in the same way that this is a very hurry up, give me society, people have come to expect that when dealing with our ancestral traditions. And people don't want to have the experiences necessary to glean the wisdom. They just want to do and say whatever it will take to just get the end result, which is either a title or some type of trinket or totem, just to prove that they have this title, and also so they can turn around and charge people gobs of money because they have that title. It's become akin to the westernization of education, with the notion of going to school for a certain amount of time and then expecting that once you complete, you get your your certificate as proof that you went through it, and then you can bounce off and do whatever. And there, that does exist to a degree, but it wasn't really like that before. It wasn't. I mean, it really surprised me 12 years ago when a woman who had been studying with me for quite a while and went through, even though the cruise she went through, but didn't really earn their ankhs. Or ankhs is plural. But truthfully, I just graduated them because I was tired of them all. I really was. It wasn't right. It really wasn't right. But I realized that things were just not clicking, right? I mean, and I'll get to that in a minute. And anyway, the student said to me, "So Queen Mother, are we going to get a certificate when we're done to prove that we went through it?" And I said, "Do you feel you really need that? I mean," but then I was faced with the reality of the world that we are in. We have blended Westernization with African traditional religions, with indigenous faiths, with ancestral practices in a way that makes it comfortable for people today who have very little patience, who have very few ethics, and who are only about building based on having these titles, missing the point about living the culture, as we call it. Okay, people pick up books. They're taught they can do self-initiations. Maybe in some circles, but in truth, if you're going to have a title, then it should be that you have had a mentor. And it's not all about the feel good, because initiation is not that. Not saying I have not had some beautiful experiences in ceremonies. I've shared that with you all, but I've also shared that I've had some pretty dreadful experiences. But I have to say, the last one that I had during this sabbatical, everything, boom, clicked. The energy that from going through that ceremony, the very tedious and extensive ceremony, really kicked in a way that it hadn't 2 years ago. I understand completely, and I experienced an elevation in my energy because I experienced an integration of these ancestral practices in a way that I hadn't before, and a closeness with you and my seshu, my ancestors. And I have to tell you, the benefit of studying, especially even deeper over this period of time I've been away, has been to find out that we've been told the wrong word for ancestors. It's really seshu. Okay, I'm just going to say that, right? I've been working to make the corrections in all of the literature that I've put out. But this jumped my energy up several levels. And it blew my first eye open to a degree that it had not been before. And my goodness, the stuff I've seen and that I now know. Yeah. So going back to the whole thing of what people expect and why they expect to be handed things instead of earning things. I thought about what my relationships were like with the best of my mentors, and they did not spoon feed me anything. They offered me advice. They would offer advice when I would ask for it. I was here's what I was. Many of you are familiar with the term solitary, right? How many of you are familiar with that term? And if you're not familiar, it's okay. Okay. Um, Joanne, I know you know what a solitary is. That's what I was before I became comedic. That's what I was when I discovered uh, Yamaja and when I discovered various facets of the Loa. I was solitary. I wasn't dependent on a group, even though at one point I did belong to one. And I remember feeling like, well, okay, it was like a circle, you know, and it was, we met at the moon cycles and we did ceremonial work in helping to elevate ourselves in our awakening of consciousness, and also to build a closer relationship with the elements and nature, and also to put energy out into the world that was going to be healing. We shared information about our healing, speaking of healing, our healing practices. It was kind of like let's say a spiritual coffee clutch, okay? A mystical coffee clutch. And I'm being a bit guarded in the words here because I have a very vast audience and not everybody understands all of this. Y'all got to do a little digging if you want to find out a little further, okay? But for those of you who are keeping up and on board with me with this, I know that you understand. So when you're solitary, that means that your mystical works that you are involved in are all about you. Not saying it's about me. I'm saying it's about the work that you choose to do. You don't have somebody over you assigning you homework. You don't have somebody over you looking over your shoulder, this, that, and the other. No, you're doing your thing in your practice that you are discovering in terms of what works for you, right? And exploring and doing research. But the main thing is that it's experiential. And there is no fear in being experiential, because that means you're being experimental. You're trying new things that you had not tried before. And that's how you find out what works. If this fell apart, that doesn't work, okay? Or you have to look at why this didn't work. If this manifested, you have to look at why it manifested, and then you have to work to make sure you hold on to it so that it doesn't break apart. It's a lot. It's a lot. And for where from the place where I entered Kemetic spirituality, basically, I let myself get dragged into it. And I also, but before, let me just continue with my tribute to Baba Haru, because I do want to give him tribute for being bold enough to resurrect the spiritual practice of Kemetic spirituality, Kemetic theology, living the culture, for being bold enough to be walking around in African garb and very finely dressed at that. He was a designer and an artist, and very self-assured in how he expressed himself. And so somebody who was a former cop, to be walking around, even when he was a cop, walking around in African garb and carrying an ankh that he had created because he was also a jeweler, that was quite a lot. He said that he was forced to undergo a psychiatric exam because it looked crazy to other people. Now, today, it's nothing, but he paved the way. He absolutely paved the way. And by starting the Shrine of Ptah, it created a Mecca for people of the faith to be able to go to. It gave us a place to land. So, we've gone through a lot of changes in the community over the years, but the biggest thing for me has been really reflecting on how I got there. The experiences of being a part of the Kemetic community has been rich. It's been painful. Experienced a lot of ATR hurts. And this is This is this is not directly tied to Baba Heru. This is basically because of where things have gone to, where we are now, the things I've experienced, even from when I first got pulled into it. Okay, because again, I was looking for the Orisha and Loa path. Okay, and I mean, even though I discovered them in like 1990, still I was looking for somebody who could teach me, right? In the same way that I had my mentor for 13 years who taught me about um, women's spirituality and earth-based indigenous practices in relation to that. And she actually is the first one who introduced me to Sekhmet. Um, the metaphysical church that I was in was very well aware of where I was supposed to be in reclaiming my African traditions. And they did everything to get me there, not holding me back from my destiny, which was a blessing. The things that my ancestors did to prepare me for all the reclamation of our traditions, from finding the Allan Kardec books in the yard sale and learning about spiritism, what is spiritismo, right? All of these various facets that belong in one catch-all um, uh, belief system to what is called Sanse, um, you know, um, and then Lord, I learned so much, so much. So when you have people who are behind you and believe in you and who see for you what you can't see for yourself, oh no, we know why you're here. You're supposed to be on this road. It got me on that road. And then I went this way because I thought that's where I was supposed to be. I heard some buzzwords being said that sounded very, very familiar to me that when I was here. But I found out that over here, that it was not at all what I thought it was going to be about. And but still persevered. I found that the ethics of many of the people that I had encountered were not what I was used to. In the sacred spiritual circles that I belonged to, people were pretty much of the same vibe, you know? And, it's said that you can't really expect to have good communication with somebody who doesn't share the same ethics as you. And it's true. They don't have the same moral compass. They don't have the same belief system. I don't mean they have to have the same religion, but at least you have to have found a strong foundation of what is right and what is wrong. And it was a big shock to me to find that there was just a big difference. And this is not just Kemetic, this is ATRs in general, okay? This is kind of the world that we're in general right now too, Get, grab, gimme. Doesn't matter if I have ethics or not, because I'm still going to get and grab what I want. And then throw the name of religion on top of it and get away with this, that, and the other. It's a world that I understand in theory and also as a person of compassion who is forced to sit and examine exactly why people are the way that they are, as a person who lives on the planet who is constantly having to question my own self about why I do the things that I do. You take things apart and you have a better understanding of why a person is driven to be a certain way. Okay. But does that mean that I have to be part of that? Listen, in 2 days, it will be the anniversary, the anniversary of the death of Don Miguel Ortiz Hill, who initiated me as a Nanga in the Shona Ndebele water tradition. That was the most miraculous, profound initiation that I experienced in 2006. Don Miguel passed away October 22nd, 2022. Blessings upon his memory. And I have him on my ancestor altar, and I pray that his transition was peaceful. Well, from what his daughter said and people around him, he transitioned very peacefully. And but I pray that his new adventure as an ancestor has been joyous and peaceful. And I say all that because, and I know this is all stream of consciousness here, but I hope I'm making sense. And if anybody has any questions, please post them or comments. When I got to know Don Miguel, I had the question of why I had seizures. I had other spiritual colleagues who told me that they felt that it had something to do with ancestral ties. And surely enough, that was the case. And I learned that through an article that Don Miguel had written. And it included the topic of, well, it was about sacred illness. And, that's something that I covered here on this channel. And epilepsy is considered to be one of those sacred illnesses recognized by indigenous societies, that the child who had seizures was gifted, spiritually gifted, and was given to the spiritual leader or the shaman or the medicine person of the community so that they could be an apprentice and so that they could eventually take over. So after many bumps in the road, all these years later, finally being back to being seizure-free, no medication, and yielding to my spiritual calling completely and not fighting anymore, so that I will not be here, but here. I have fully reclaimed my calling as a Nanga. I've always said that I'm a water priestess. But see, here's the thing about being a Nanga, and this is not me. This does not mean that I'm letting go of the teachings that I have experienced, that I've learned all these years, because they've been rich and they've actually helped to enrich my walk. Additionally, it has also been something that helped to build a bridge between that and with Vodisam, believe it or not, and Orisha traditions. They all came together in Kemet, but it gave me a clearer understanding of the others. Kemet is like the Sansei of the ATRs, if you will. But I took an oath as a peacemaker when I entered that water, when I went down 3 times and was baptized, and when I felt like a refrigerator had been lifted off of me when I got out of that water, and also when the energy in my hands intensified, and I knew that it was in alignment with where I was supposed to be. And especially because the way everything came together, and especially because of the relationship as brother and sister that Don Miguel and I shared. And, there were times when I would get upset, like later on, I was just like, you didn't teach me anything, but actually he did. I fell into that whole thing of, oh, well, your teacher is supposed to spoon feed you, even though the best of my teachers did not do that. But that's what I'd become accustomed to doing, falling in line with other people who have flipped around how we mentor folks into spiritual traditions and how we let them breathe so that they're able to go out on their own and go fetch it, go find out, learn, You know, I've been big on putting tools in people's hands so that they could do the research. And I give thanks for the Metaphysical Church that really instilled that into those of us who graduated as ministers. And we were honored as free-spirited spiritual people who had to find some level of discipline to get through these classes and to do what was necessary to graduate. But still, the fact is that we were all a bunch of free spirits, highly intellectual people who were there to learn, to better ourselves and also to better the planet, and to use the gifts that we had as psychics, as healers, as speakers, gifted in so many ways, where we were not thought of as just like a bunch of weirdos. No, not at all. And if you had a conversation with anybody in that congregation, you would find yourself in quite a deep level of thought and exposed to new ideas that would take you to another whole level. This is what it was like when I was dealing with Don Miguel. And for it to not be an exercise in intellectualism, for it to be a passionate focus on what do we do to heal the planet? Why are we here? What is our role? What are our roles? Are we on the path? Are we dedicated to the path? Are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? You know, there are times I get really frustrated with living here in Newark. It's not the community. I love the community. And of course, Newark has been home to so many, it's still home to so many relatives. You know, I leave the house, I usually run into somebody. My father built his business here, was here for 25 years. He moved here after he came, after he left South Carolina and migrated up here, up north to Newark. And you know, it's not just family that I run into, it's friends, it's community, okay? Politically, I get frustrated sometimes, but at least I'm encouraged to stay involved and to work to make change, because that's part of the peacemaker path as well. You know, it's not just sitting back and just praying for peace. Peace is a tedious task. It takes work, applied efforts. It's frustrating. And if you don't have a community that will support you, then it can be even more frustrating, I guess you could say. But the fact is, the community here is beautiful. And on top of that, I live near a river. I go to that river to pray. I pray for the water. I pray for the water spirits. I pray for the land spirits. I pray for all of the elements. I pray for the city. I pray for our government. I pray for our citizens. I pray for our children. And I pray that harmony and balance comes in spite of the issues that we have right now with gentrification and outrageous rents and landlord issues. And I'm here for a reason. Just like with any minister, just like with any ordained minister, you're planted there for a reason. And as a Nanga, and as my other godfather, Baba Mandaza says, I go where spirit says I need to go. I go where spirit leads me. You go and you bring the medicine with you. Even just saying that, it brings me peace. Okay. and teaching others to find the peace within themselves and to also care enough about where they live so that they get involved, so that they're aware, so that they're able to do something in some grand or small way, including to pray for our water, to pray for our air, to pray for all of the elements, and mainly to pray for us as global citizens, to pray for our world, especially with everything that's going on now. Those of us who know how to do that do have an obligation to teach that to others more than anything. It's about the heart. It's about love, and yes, loving yourself, working through your issues. Yeah, I'm still in therapy. Give thanks and praise. It has been tremendously healing for me. And in dealing with all of the trauma that I've experienced, I'm very grateful that every week I can go to therapy, because I'm better than I was 5 years ago. I'm better than I was 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last year. And back to a place of empowerment where I'm able to sit back and look, as I had during this time of sabbatical. And those of you who checked in on me when you knew that I had COVID, I thank you. I'm grateful. Thank you. Thank you. For others who are basically like, yeah, well, let us know when you're well. You learn a lot about people when you get sick. And even though I know I've had a lot of health challenges, that's when you really find out who's there. Yeah, folks were like, oh, she's sick again, you know. And yet, studying the compassionate healer. You know, with compassion, a lot of it comes from going through things that other people go through as well. And whether it's health challenges, whether it's living circumstances, relationships, you know, it's hard for people who have not been through different challenges in life to relate and be relatable. I've been teaching yoga classes, chair yoga, here in the city. I started at one library, and then I was asked to go to another, and then another. And these are free classes. They're free. I leave smiling after every session. And it's not just about being able to share about making yourself feel better, you know, doing yoga, which seems so impossible to many people, and doing it from your chair, having an intergenerational group of people who come. It's more about being able to have one-on-one conversation with people in either before or even during the course of some yoga sessions or afterwards. And then being able to say, hey, let me recommend this, you know, or yeah, I know I've been there, you know, or hey, I'm going through the same thing. And being able to truly build with community on a level that is, I hope impactful. It's definitely sincere, which leads me to, I started out talking about temple, the temple that Baba Heru created with the Shrine of Ptah. So now I wasn't directly connected to the temple at first, okay? And only I'm still, I became connected because, well, I almost became, well, I won't go down that road. But my Tefnut Grandmaster Cam ended up taking classes and graduating from the sacred kingman classes that Baba Heru used to have for the men. So by lineage, we're connected. And then at some point in recent years, Baba Heru told me, "Oh well, I consider your temple to be under the umbrella of the Shrine of Ptah. Especially because Grandmaster Cam is not here now, and the Shrine of Ptah is not. I mean, Shrine of Kepra is not here, which is Baba, which is Grandmaster Cam's temple where I had received my anku, my ankhs, and my title as Queen Mother. So, so the idea of being part of a temple means basically you're supposed to be like part of a spiritual family and so forth. But I have to say, going back to Grandmaster now, I remember one ceremony, no, two. And I used to ask, why don't we have ceremonies? Well, he was doing stuff with his with the crew that also was initiated in Orisha traditions. He was also a high priest, or a Babalawo rather, in the Shango Baptist Orisha tradition. And so I didn't really get to feel like part of the temple, really. I got to use the space because since I was a member, that meant that I could bring my temple sessions there, which I did. And it was like that up until when he passed away. But even so, this pressure of starting and maintaining a temple, I love community. Community to me is vital. It's necessary. My grandmother used to say, you can't live in this world alone. You can't. But my concept of a temple had been based on my experiences with circles, spiritual circles, and also with the metaphysical church that I belonged to. I mean, where it was more family, and there was no question of support and no question of there not being parity and there being also encouragement and growth, but love at the very core of everything, and concern about one another, looking in on one another, calling, checking in, The second most wonderful initiation I had was with my mentor of 13 years. And I mean, I remember she made a big pot of stew and homemade bread, okay, for my ceremony. And after the ceremony, and it was a glorious ceremony, sitting down, breaking bread with her, and we were at our friend's house, and she had the fire going in the fireplace, and it was a very down to earth, caring, going beyond the distance, above and beyond the call of duty kind of experience. And it was all, again, based on love and respect. So for me, in being encouraged to start a temple, which in truth started at my dining room table, where I had artists who would come over and ask me for professional advice, but then also ask me to do oracle consultations for them on their careers. But the biggest thing was that they wanted the spiritual advice. And it started with my feeding them at my dining room table. And it kind of expanded from there. But then it expanded beyond the intimate group, and then there were all these expectations, and um, at this point, this is when I stepped into the whole comedic piece. Now, truthfully, I ended up allowing myself to be pulled in because I couldn't find somebody to teach me in the Orisha tradition or with the Loa. It was what was there, you know. Uh, so, and then being expected to have a comedic temple and people just wanting to be around you because they wanted the information from you. It was not cool. Did manage to um, bring together a group of people who also had experienced a lot of ATR hurt, and we formed a new temple. That's when I was living in Philadelphia. It was beautiful. It was truly a family temple. You know, we met every week. The women's group met every week at my house, and we had temple service at my house on Fridays for everybody. It outgrew my house, and we had to go to the local community center. And then when the word got out about it, then we started having strangers show up, and it made it an unsafe situation, you know, and a bit scary because the fact that, listen, when you're trying to teach something that's based on a strong ethical code, and if you have a bunch of people who show up who don't operate from that anywhere near that code, you know, then it's very hard. It's very hard. The same thing applies to people who want to become priests and priestesses. You know, if you have had no, if your ethical code is so far away from what you're trying to become a priest or priestess in, then it really it ain't gonna work. It's not gonna work. I mean, people do it, but the question is, are they really living it? You know, found out that the what had become traditional for so many of the earth-based religions, doing a year and a day for initiation is just not enough time. You know, it's not for people who have not been living it. You know, if you're not immersed in the tradition, if it's not in you blood and bone, then it's really not right to expect that you're going to be fully immersed and be able to earn the title of priest or priestess in a year and a day. It's just not. In Kemet, to become a priest or priestess, you had to be a Wabe priest. Wabe, UAB, okay, or WAB. It's mispronounced WAB, but it's Wabe. You had to be a Wabe priest for years. Wabe is purification. So that meant not just that you were cleaning, but it also meant that you were getting purified through your soul, you know, and also from your mindset, so that you were not bringing in all of that stuff from the outside world and trying to apply it to a spiritual lifestyle. That's not really honored today, and I don't mean that it's correct for people who are in a position to be able to elevate somebody, to leave somebody stuck in a position of a Wabe priest simply because they feel that person's a threat and they're trying to step on their progress. I don't mean that at all. I do, however, mean that if you are going into priesthood in Kemetic tradition, you have to spend a long time. Purification of the mind and the heart. Never mind focusing on the diet. You know, I've met people who eat red meat, pork, you name it, who are some of the most beautiful people and who have their mystical stuff on point, who manifest like this, okay, and who are wonderful people. Yes, how you eat and how you take care of your house of spirit is a big deal. And there is a correlation. However, it is not one size fits all. We've come to believe that you have to eat a certain way, you have to dress a certain way, you have to use certain buzzwords, certain lingo. They have their place. But I've known too many people from different spiritual traditions. I've seen the good, I've seen the questionable. And I know that it's time for people to open their eyes, their minds, and their hearts to find the places where we converge, to learn more about one another, to drop the superficialities that are associated with limited beliefs and that keep us from working together in a way where we're able to heal our communities, our families, our towns, our cities, our countries, our world together. So here's a question that I've had to ponder. So in the Nanga tradition, Shona Ndebele healer, in the path of the peacemaker, are you required to have a temple? No. You're focused on the work. Not saying that you're not focused on the work if you have a temple, but you're continuing to develop your strength as a healer, your insights, your abilities. You're doing what's necessary. People come to you for help, you give it. You do your spiritual work to heal your community. And, I don't go out and announce when I'm getting ready to go and pray, okay? People who have seen me, they know to leave me alone. People who are regulars who, hang out in the area, they know what I'm there for. I go, I do my prayers and offerings, and I leave. It's part of my responsibility with being here. So, I am going to Thomas Ozil. I'm not really quite sure how to make your first comments out. Good morning. Nice to meet you. We're having spiritual conversation here. And just so you know, I'm an ordained minister. Okay. From Brazil. That's in my blood. Are you an Umbandista? Tomas? It's my father's name. Or a spiritist, Kardecian, or Candomblé, or none of those things, or Kimbanda. See, this is another thing. A lot of us we're mixed with so many, many things, And so how do you ignore that? How do you ignore that? So getting fulfilled in the way that helps you to be fully on your path is a part of our own individual healing process, and also the alignment that is necessary for us to be who we're supposed to be. to live the way we're supposed to live, and to bring everything to the planet that we basically agreed to come here for. So, is it necessary to have a temple? No. But what we do is something called dare. I've been trying to do this since 2006, okay? People are like, yeah, but it's temple, right? Well, not really, no. Dare, the word in Kemetic language that we use is chari, which is the fortress, or the sound healing place of safety, wellness, soundness. In Dare, people gather generally once a month or twice a month at moon cycles, at the new or full moon, do healing work on one another, listen to our dreams, we share our dreams, and help with deciphering the dream if there's someone who is stuck and not really understanding what it means. People bring food, we share, it's a community meal. There's drumming, there's singing, there's dance. It's a spiritual community day of sharing and caring, doing healing work, getting counsel from the spiritual elders, or if there's one that's designated. Or, if you have a lot of people bringing their gifts to the table, someone does sound healing, someone Reiki, although we use Shenorit energy in our tradition. Whatever their gift is, it's for the healing of the community, and so that we can help each other. That's the goal. That's the idea. That's what I've been trying to to get people. Turn my thing off here. I'm trying to get people to accept, as opposed to a brick and mortar temple. Not that doesn't have its place. Now, 10 years ago, I had the Sharem Shanu art and yoga studio down on Broad Street here in Newark. And so for about a year and a half, I had free yoga lessons. Then by donation, very few people put the donation in, but but it was a community space. My art studio was there, and then when you walk through another door, you walked into my the yoga temple, the Kemetic yoga temple. And if people needed to go in there and just sit and meditate in front of one of the altars, if they needed to have yoga class, and they came. If they needed food, I had a little food pantry for the artists. If they needed counsel, I was there. If they needed to just sit and be someplace that had nice healing music on, that's what it was there for. And I have to give Grandmaster Cam credit for that, because it was inspired from what he had out in Brooklyn. That's how it was set up. So, not with an art studio and stuff. It was a small little space, but it was a sacred healing space for people to come in and just get their heads together. People could smell the incense outside. They heard the tinkling of the bells in the wind chimes, and they saw the spiritual iconography in the windows, and also they would see Grandmaster sitting outside in his sacred white clothing when the weather was nice. So, and I always say that whether it was streetwalker or Wall Street banker, everyone stopped and saluted him, and that's because he gave each of them respect as well. Everybody was welcome. I saw him give money to people who came in and asked, you got $10? He just whip it out and give it to them, So That's what inspired um, Sharem Shanu Yoga Temple. And, there would be service. Um, and that was based on the yoga the classes, and then also sacred Kemetic text, and then fellowship afterwards. But after a while, I got burnt out. The need was just so great. And it got a little scary because here I was, just one woman, and in the building that it was in, um, there were a lot of other artists, but there were also other business people because there were offices upstairs. And so there were strange people coming in at all hours of the night because the artists, we had 24/7 access to our studios. So I would be in there working on some art or new clothing design or whatever late at night, or even just some paperwork or updating the website or whatever. And just some really not so cool looking characters came in, and yeah, whatever they were in the building to get their little hookup for. But I said, I can't renew the lease, not like this. But I always continued to have the dream of having a Kemetic ashram. The word for, the term that would be akin to an ashram in the Kemetic community, the Kemetic language, is kibbut, you know that word, and also chebu, which means restoration. So, restoration sanctuary. Because people need to have a place to just safely come in and restore themselves. I thought about what it was like when I would have my different dramas going on in my life, and the dear friend and his wife would always invite me down to their home, the suburbs outside of Philadelphia, and I would just go upstairs in the attic room and be just all bundled up in a blanket, right? Just in the dark. And they would check on me. You okay? You need some food? You need that. Sometimes you just need that. I would just need that couple of days to just veg out and restore myself. And that's something that you kind of experience when you get sick. Your body breaks down, right? But as you're rebuilding, you realize the importance of your body forcing you to rest a lot of times, because society will burn you out. It will. Life can burn you out. And if you don't have somebody there to help to pick you up and put you back together, then it can be really not good. So, the last time that I talked with you, Joanne, I was talking about that I wanted to do this online. That was months ago, right? Well, here we are. Anuk Seped. I'm ready. So doing Dare, or Chari in the Kemetic language, online as a safe sanctuary for people to just come. If you want to be curled up in your blanket and just listen, if you want to participate in the activities. In fact, the first thing I have planned is something I meant to do months ago, because I did this at the library. I've continued to do free programs for the library as well because of the fact that they ain't got no money. So, and in order for them to still be there for the community, they have to have programming, but it's hard because they really don't have money to pay anybody like that. So it's been a blessing for me to be able to go in and do programming. And one of the things that I did was the Mojo Bag Workshop. I talked about the film. What's the name of the movie? You'd think I'd have it seared into my head. What is the name of that movie I did the review on with the two brothers? What's the name of the movie? But I did the workshop on making a juju bag. Juju Grigri, Mujo, Sachet. They're supposed to be sachet. You get the idea. So this is the first thing that I have planned for the first jari, and for us also to do some chanting, to just to do some healing talk, and to basically rebalance. To rebalance. Thank you, Joanne. Yes, sinners. Yeah. So this will be the circle. I'm going to ask for donations ahead of time so that we know how many people, and so also we know that it's a safe space by having people pre-registered. Safe space. That's of prime importance. So now, as far as continuing with teaching, and also as far as initiation, I have some folks I still have to initiate. But, and I've been holding on to these books. And so I have a surprise as far as that's concerned. I'll wait till the end of the week to announce that. But I will say this. It is important to be able to practice the Kemetic faith without feeling as though you have to be initiated. Because you don't. There's a term for that, okay? I'll save that until the end of the week. But learning how to incorporate everyday practice of Kemetic spirituality, as opposed to feeling as though you have to have all this information. I know that we're hungry for information, but here's the truth. See, a lot of stuff that's out here really should not be out here. Stuff was stolen from Kemet, from out of the temples, from out of the tombs. A lot of it was sacred information that was privy to the priesthood. This was stuff that not everyday people did not have. There were some things, yes, but not all the stuff that's out here. And if you're going to do the priesthood level stuff, that means you need to have put in the years and years and years preparing you for that level of priesthood. To become a high priest took 40 years in Kemet. If you were selected to come in at entry level and become a wave priest, that took a long time. Then, okay, moving into this. So this, do you know how many different aspects of priesthood there is? There's so many different levels, so many, including the singers, the dancers, those who taught Ika or yoga, okay? As I found from my research that it was called Ika or Yuga or Yuge, okay? Those who were the scribes. And not all scribes were priests. Some were. We also have to remember that not every person in Kemet was literate. Most were not. The privileged class was able to read. Some were able to read a bit. Some more than others. So there was not mysticism that was all centered around the written word or recitation. There was storytelling, which is powerful, okay? The Sajeti. But the Sajeti had to be somebody who was very well learned on a number of fronts. But as far as the average person was concerned, because there was the average person's juju, okay, the average person's practice, it was not centered around writing. Maybe a few symbols here and there, but it was not centered around writing. And not everybody who was a priest was an expert in writing either. That meant that generally they could, but it did not mean that they were an expert scribe. Okay? Not all high priests had the ability to split the waters, which some did have the ability for or of. Ability to, it's late. The ability to do. Okay? Joanne said, so people expect to be priests, priestess in a few classes. See, exactly. Exactly. You can't. You can't read a book and do that. You can't, it's not about some form and fashion, also of being able to say certain key words, being able to do certain rituals. It's much, much more. So much more. And I have new notes every day because I'm studying every day. And there are new revelations every day based on the things that I've experienced, things that I read years ago or have continued to read. And then all of a sudden, one day, bam, wait, that's what this means? Or you get things on different levels. You realize that this symbol is not everything that you thought it was. For instance, with the Kemetic runes, okay, and I broke the code a decade and a half ago. I came to realize that the very first symbol, Fehu, which has it's a compound word, and there are two glyphs that are associated with it, right? But the meaning is so much deeper than I originally thought, so much deeper. And it's tied directly into Bantu spirituality. Bantu spirituality had a deep impact on Kemetic traditions. It was a melting pot of traditions in Kemet, but the Bantu had a great deal of influence. And so the understanding, and also tied into the Benin Vodun tradition, that first symbol. I mean, so much more, and because I didn't have that information then, because I had not experienced these things at that point. And because of my further immersing myself in these other traditions. So the light bulb goes on, boom, right? Time goes on, and then the light expands because your mind has expanded, because your heart has expanded, because your experiences have expanded. And you realize, oh, wow, it's this. I didn't know that. What I knew was deep. This is really deep. Joanna says, it's taken me 10 years to become a psychologist, and I'm still not done. Ongoing process, right? Psychology is such a, wow, it's a challenging field. And I know that it's constantly changing because there are more discoveries made in modern science today. Yeah. So to finally tackle the question about students, listen, we're going to continue. We're going to do Dare or Jari. I'm going to offer some things online. I'm slashing my prices also for a lot of different things because, this is about making certain things accessible for the people. There are certain things, like I said, that should not be out there, and I'm going to be withdrawing certain things. However, um, in light of the path that I've walked, in light of the economy that we're dealing with, and even though there are people who will say that they don't have money, but they do have money, and they just want to have classes for free, or they just want to, bargain with you and everything, and you're not supposed to do that with your teacher. You're just not. There's so many things that are happening right now. It's just like you're just not supposed to do this, But I'm continuing to do my best to be sensitive to spirit and what the best thing is for how to approach this, and putting the right information in the hands of the right people. I've been feeding a lot of folks for a long time who just I realize that there are folks who don't click like and don't subscribe because they don't want me to know I found out. They don't want me to know that they watch me and that they actually pull information from me and go over to their whatever institution they're teaching at, whether it's a temple or a class or whatever, and then they go and regurgitate what they heard that they hear from me here. And that's not right either. See, how do you call yourself comedic and you do that? That's theft. And it's dishonest. And it's lazy. And it's shameful. Do your research. Do your work. A lot of other teachers are finding the same thing. Same thing. The stats are saying one thing, but then with the likes and so forth, but wait, this is showing, they don't have, all these people say, oh, I love watching you and so forth, but then, okay. That's because people are being very stealth in the way that they're receiving their information. You should not teach what you do not know. Sister Birdie, how are you this evening? Queen Bilkis, how are you? It's good to see you. Joanne says it's plagiarism flat out, and it's not flattering. It's spiritual stealing. It is. It is. For the people who call me and, pretend that they're all buddy and so forth, and I'm just checking in on you, but then they're just trying to pick your brain about different things. Some people, and let me just say this also for you folks who are out there who are still trying to steal information for somebody else. You all should be ashamed of allowing yourselves to be used to steal from somebody who has been good to you. Okay. Somebody's been nice to you, right? I mean, it took me a minute to realize that, and this is the last thing I want to say about the wave of folks who came in when there was somebody who was no longer in my life who was co-producing my podcast at one point. And then I realized a whole wave of people who have nothing to do with my life and who are involved in activities that have nothing to do with my life came in as part of my audience. It's another reason I took a little time off, because I needed to have some time to bleed some people off. Okay. When you're not on point with where you're supposed to be, and this is talking about myself, then you'll find that things and from the moment that I stepped into the comedic pool, and again, I love the teachings. You say this, most of what I believe, most of what I've learned and the practice that I have today is not based on anything that I was taught. Although I did learn some cool things from Grandmaster Cam, okay? But by and large, what what I practice is based on the research that I've done, the guardians that have called out to me who are not um, your these are the more ancient ones, the pre-dynastic ones, okay, and who are extremely potent. And where I had to really dig, I mean, truly. So this is why is a lot of people are scrambling to try to find out information now that they're hearing about them, because the fact that it's not really being put out there like that. But again, do your homework and be willing to experience for yourself. But I was saying, continuing to teach, mentor in the way that I was mentored. Because I did find that there were times where I really had enabled, that's the worst thing you can do. And constantly spoon feeding people information is not the same as teaching. There's guidance. Yes, there is sharing. Okay. But if you're not encouraging people to do more immersive work regarding research and study simply because of the fact that you know that they don't want to, then that's not really exhibiting any strength on my part. And it's also making them lazier. A lot of times I'll have people come to me and they want the program perfectly tailored to what's comfortable for them, right? And at some point, I was like, okay, well, this is the world that we live in, so okay, I got to yield a bit. But then it becomes more and more. I encourage students to put their families first. I do, because I know that there are many of us who put our temples and students first, and family time is important. You can't get that time back. You can't. So, that's all well and good, but then it becomes, all right, so what's the schedule here? Who's setting the schedule? What happened to the schedule? It gets kind of wonky. But it's time for things to be redefined. And even though I'm saying about being a mentor and teaching in a way that is going to provide strength, insight, and also deeper encouragement of education for my students, and especially for anybody who is seeking out initiation. And I'm not doing big class. I'm not doing big classes anymore. I'm not doing big classes. I'm just. But what I am saying is that as free-spirited as I am, and as open to change as I am, discipline is important. And to get a student to discipline themselves in a way where they are doing the work and loving doing the work, finding research a joy, finding it to be the flame. Whereas before you had a little tea candle and now you've got a huge bright light. And you're able to incorporate what you learn what you see, what you experience fully into your life in a way that brings you wisdom and self mastery, and especially when it comes to mysticism, so that you're able to manifest in a way that is ethical, practical, and routine. That's the goal. You can't put information about magical techniques into people's hands who are brand spanking new at it, and especially who have not developed ethics. Back to that ethical piece. I spend so much time in therapy talking about my path, um, talking about the things that have happened to me in terms of ATR hurt, talking about the fear, the very real fear that I had developed about releasing any more of my materials, fear of leading people the wrong way because of all the things that have been out there that have been taught in the wrong way, fear of being hurt again, all of it. Fear of having stuff stolen, fear of just, and truthfully, I told my therapist the other day, I look back on this journey as far as this path, the Kemetic path is concerned, and I can't point to many good memories. And my life was here, right? Here. And then I stepped into that and it just went. And it wasn't based on the spirituality. Who's in your circle? Sometimes you finally come to realize, you know what? I think I'm in the wrong room, you know? I walked into the wrong daggone room, you know? You back out and you find the door you're supposed to go through. Or even that door you might have walked past, you know? Bertie says, correct. When I would coach, teach, and train the teams I required them to be solution oriented and not depend on me for all the answers because I'm not omni like that. Yeah, you know, I mean, you know, Shanu. One of the meanings for Shanu is also cognitive thought. That's the core of everything. Can't lose that. Cannot lose that. Otherwise, that sets us up for gullibility in entering other spaces. You know, back when I had my Nubia Goddess Rising podcast, I think the most popular episode that I did as a two-parter was about identifying cults and how to leave. I'm gonna have to address that again because we do have a lot of cults out here. They may come dressed up in particular clothing that we don't expect, but they exist. And if you're more focused on form and fashion and being part of the in crowd, right? In crowd, and being famous adjacent, you're involved or you show up because there's somebody who has a name, who has a reputation. You know, I mean, then what does that say about you? I mean, I think that's insecurity, truthfully. Let me tell you, people are people. They're people. And For the people who I know who are very well known that are friends of mine that I count as friends, they act like people. And they don't look to be treated like some kind of a superstar or to be handed all kinds of excessive privileges or anything like that. They're down to earth people. So if we get past the whole thing about being starstruck, you know, and it's comfortable on the other side too. I'm not saying I'm some star. I'm not. But I finally had to come to recognize, yeah, okay, so a lot of people know me. I don't know, right? I was getting off the bus and I ran into somebody and she's like, hi, so I said, peace and blessings. How you doing? She's like, fine. And I'm thinking, who's this? Mental Rolodex. Did I meet this person somewhere? That happens a lot. And you feel bad, right? What if I did meet this person somewhere and I have no clue? I don't know. But also it's just like, I know there's some people just like, wow. Sometimes I'll be on the bus and be like, what's she doing on the bus? I ask myself that sometimes. I was on the bus yesterday. Oh Lord, it was crazy. I finished teaching my yoga class, all nice and calm. And then you get on the bus. There are particular routes where it's just wild. I said to myself, see, this is what happens when you forget your schedule and you don't arrange a ride for yourself. That's how you find out what's going on. But yesterday was one of those days where it was like, I don't want to know what's going on this bus. I just want to get off. You got people's butts in your faces, people on there cussing each other out. People just arm to arm, all up in each other's stuff and just angry. Yeah, that all I can do is just pray in those circumstances for the energy to quell out and just hope the heck to get off the bus as soon as I can. But back to the whole thing about folks being starstruck and allowing them to get pulled into spaces just because of that, so they could say that they were there, right? So they could say that they were close to this proximity to this person. Treat yourself like you're the star. Listen, maybe it's because I'm 65. No, it's just, this is who I am. I don't care, okay? But I was touring doing Ain't Misbehaving, and we did the Hollywood tour. They had to really do some coercing to get me to do that tour because I didn't want to go. He talked me into it. I told him I would give him only 9 days. We get to Hollywood. I met some celebrities that I'd wanted to meet. They came to see the show, right? And afterwards, they would come and meet the cast, and we'd do the obligatory cheesecake pictures and stuff like that. And I'd go back to my hotel room. I was tired. I'd get out of my makeup and walk down the street to the hotel. The rest of them stayed there and did all their little schmoozing and stuff like that. My thing was like, I'm gonna do this 9-day stint and get the heck out of here and go home. Hollywood is one of the most superficial places that you would ever see in life. Yeah, Bertie, talking loud from the back of the bus is sheer madness and hilarious, isn't it? And surely enough, there was somebody from the back of the bus. He's yelling, things have changed. Ain't nobody gonna give up a seat for somebody as older. Well, it's like, we all know this, okay? And so this young blood, he starts yelling, no. The two of them, they're just going at each other. One's here, one's here. This is not helpful to anybody right now. Yeah. Joanne says, I always repeat what you taught me about not everyone should be allowed in your house, physical or spiritual. Let me tell you about that real quick. So, I've been going through this whole thing with, all right, how should I put this? I'm trying to make sure that I'm not. Okay. So, it's part of routine in all cities, including Newark, for and also with the state, to do routine inspections on rental properties, right? I'm not gonna go into how many times the the inspectors have been here, and this is not an indictment on them, okay? Wink, wink. It's not. It's like, yeah, you would hope that the owners would take ownership in handling repairs, okay? But some higher ups came, because I mean, my thing was like, it's been 2 years, and I'm still dealing with X, Y, and Z. So some higher ups came. Now, as it is, you feel kind of invaded when you have state and city inspectors coming. They're just doing their job, and it's for your benefit, right? To make sure that the place that's being rented to you, that you're paying money for, is in livable conditions and that there are no violations, right? So, but this last time, I don't know. I knew that one person from city council might possibly be coming, and I let this other person know I do not want this person to come, because this person will not understand any of my spiritual stuff at all, and will think that it's some kind of way, and will go back and tell everybody about it. Okay, I knew that the person who was coming was not like that, right? But the other two officials that came along with him, I had no idea, right? So now I'm looking at my apartment like, I don't know what they think of me. Not that I care what they think of me, but sometimes, you don't want for somebody's misinterpretation of your beliefs to be taken some kind of way and held against you, right? I mean, I'm aware it's more commonplace for a lot of people to have brooms on their doors, okay, and objects from nature and around the apartment and altars and all of that. But my entire home is my temple. This is my temple, okay? So I've got all my sacred objects all over. And even though it may look interesting and, beautiful, I think, and so I've been told, for others who have no clue, they're probably like, what the heck? What is she into? That bothered me. Not because of them, because I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, they might have been thinking, hey, she's into this too, bendiciones, but it could have also been, oh, just some religious weirdo or whatever, okay? So this has pushed me to, and listen, they didn't do anything untoward. They didn't say anything untoward, okay? This is all what I'm thinking. Now I'm looking with a fresh eye. As soon as you walk in the door, altar, okay? An interesting looking altar at that. Walk in here, altar, 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 walking in my bedroom, altar, altar. Okay. I am more committed to the idea of teaching. Well, I want to say teaching tolerance, because we went through that whole thing of teaching tolerance in the 90s, and that just completely collapsed. on its face. But teaching more open-mindedness, that doesn't mean you have to accept what I believe, including the 3 skeletons that I got from the dollar store that are in yoga poses on my bookshelf here. I thought they were hilarious, so I have a macabre sense of humor, right? So wait, let me show you at least one of them. Look. I think they're hilarious. I don't know what they thought. This woman's off her rocker, right? And then on my bulletin board in my bedroom, where I have all my notes from over the years, okay, that have gone into my yoga book, that have gone into sermons, that have gone, I've got a drawing of the symbol Jebu, okay, and it just looks like 2 fingers, like it's just this part here, just like the way it's drawn in the hieroglyph, right? Yesterday, I walked and I looked at it. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what they think that is. Because if you look at it really quickly, it can look pretty phallic, and it's not, it's 2 fingers, right? But again, you don't know what people think. So anyway, I think that just something needs to be taught in terms of people overlooking. I mean, unless you got somebody like strung up and somewhere, or taped up somewhere, or tied to a chair. So I don't know, or somebody screaming from the closet, "Let me out!" I mean, just any of this stuff should be overlooked. So hopefully, I don't know. I'm thinking more about what I need to do to share about that, because we're all different. And you can have somebody who is Christian and walks into a Jewish home and doesn't like any of the iconography because of whatever beliefs or misbeliefs that they have. The same thing with walking to somebody who is Muslim, where they don't have any artwork, but they do have the writings, and teaching. Again, not tolerance. There needs to be a better word. There needs to be a better word. You like that one, Joanne? I'm gonna show you the other 2. Well, at least I can reach this one. Wait, I'm gonna show you one more. Look at this. Dollar Tree. There's another one that's sitting like this. I don't know what these people think of me. Listen, it's almost time for Dia de los Muertos. I got a piece of artwork outside on my outer door with a female skeleton holding maracas. I don't know what they think. Medina Ali, how are you? Yes, acceptance. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Acceptance. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, has anybody experienced that? Before I sign off here, has anybody experienced that, where somebody has come in and just completely misread you because they misread your space? Joanne, you gonna go find them? Listen, you better You better go quick because they've got the Christmas stuff out in what's the store down the street? Burlington. Now listen, okay, I slept this one. I waited too long. There was a beautiful statue of a redheaded skeleton in a bridal dress. You know that's Maman Brigitte with a skeleton with the tucks and everything. You know, that's Baron, right? I was like, I'm gonna wait till these go on sale. The price was great. It was beautiful. The romantic pose, you know, Baron, he's holding Maman Brigitte, and it's a beautiful embrace. It was about like this big too. Now I think it cost like $14. I was like, I'm gonna wait till it goes on sale because I told you, listen, y'all who know me, I live my life on a budget. You did hear me say I got this at the Dollar Tree, right? So I go back a couple of days ago. I'm figuring, okay, it's got to be like $6 or something like that now. Gone. The Halloween stuff was gone. They had this other beautiful, really beautiful skull with a gold serpent entwined around it. It was beautiful. Same thing. I was like, I'm gonna wait till it goes on sale. My feelings were so hurt. I mean, listen, I loved the holiday display, but I'm like, it's the middle of October. So this brother was standing there and he saw me looking around, and I said, all the Halloween stuff is gone. He was like, sis, it's been gone for 2 weeks. You know the world we're in now. You should have got it when you saw it. Like, thanks. Then I go upstairs and I see that they have the remnants of their Halloween stuff at the line, you know, where they have the things that you would buy that, like, you know, last minute purchases, like, you know, hey, I think I'll get this. And I saw they had the skull with the gold serpent. And so I asked somebody to reach over and look and see how much it was. It was $6.25, right? But I didn't want to get in that line. Listen, if you go to Burlington and you're online, if you go and it's after 4 o'clock, you're going to be online forever and a day. And so if you go in the morning, right when they open at 8 o'clock, there's no line. It's only a few blocks from me, right? So I said, okay, I'll just come back in the morning. Well, I wasn't able to get there until early afternoon because life be lifing, you know. It was gone. Everything that was left from the Halloween stuff was gone. Gone. I mean, yeah. So if you're gonna go looking for them at the Dollar Tree, you may have more of a chance because they will leave their holiday stuff out longer. Okay, but don't be surprised if it's gone in the place of the holiday stuff. You see a bunch of Santas there. That's all I gotta say. And you know, for those of us who have brooms on our doors, we love this kind of stuff. Anyway, Medina says, I misread as a person and I won't change, however. I'm more than willing to converse. If you can't buy it when you see something, hide it in a weird place in the store. Let me tell you what I usually do. I usually will put my hand on it and say, wait for me. And it stays. I say, wait for me until I'm ready. Meaning you get down to a reasonable price. Because again, I live my life on a budget. If I get $1 million, I'll still be living my life on a budget. But that's what I usually do. And this time, because I didn't go and put my hand on it, what did I do? I asked somebody else to turn it around and tell me how much it was, but I didn't put my hand on it and say, wait for me. Yeah. That's part of that life, Yeah. Joanne says, I get brooms, mezuzah biddles. What is that? Make me Google mezuzah biddles. Help me out. By the way, last week over at Aldi, listen, Black folks, we say Aldi's, right? Over at Aldi, they had cinnamon brooms. I mean, nice size cinnamon brooms for $4.99. That's what I have on my door now. And it smells heavenly. And cinnamon is great for attracting money, but also great for protection. I have it on the inside of my door. Sister Skeleton Maracas on the other side. Joanne, you're not gonna help me out here? Brooms, mezuzah biddles. What? Jewish protection for the front door. Oh, I want to see what that looks like. I want to see that. I am so fascinated with all the world cultures and what people use for protection over their door. Listen, I got a horseshoe over my back door. I have a broom. No, I have a feather wand that's one of my followers, fans up in Connecticut gifted me with, like in 2009, I think it was, 2007. And a broom and some raffia. Missy's. Everybody open a window in Google. MEZZYZ. What is it? Oh, bitters. Now look, what came up? It says Maleza Cítricos Mexicanos. Girl, you're going to have to text me that. Because it's not showing me anything. It says Maleza. Oh, let's try to change it. Okay. I still don't know what this is. You know why? Because it's not being recognized. Text me, please. Yeah, send me a picture. Okay. It is 1:58. I mean, it is at 1 minute and 58. 1 hour 58. You see, I know I'm tired. Y'all must be tired too. Okay, so I'm going to post something hopefully tomorrow regarding the new moon, which is supposed to be Tuesday. We will be doing our circles, our healing sessions, our safe spaces on the new and full moons. Okay. I know I used to give you all ceremony and all that stuff. And like I told you a while ago, And for those of you who belong to other temples, other Kemetic temples, and you're here for education, the best thing I can say to you is, because it's good to expand your mind and all of that, but if you aren't getting the information from your temple that you're getting from me, then you need to rethink that. On top of that, you don't want to be in a position where you're betraying your teacher. Okay. I got put into a position a couple of times by folks from other temples who were looking for information on something and then reached out to me. And then, I didn't know that they were given a directive by their teacher to find this. And, they continued to dip back into my pool. And then all of a sudden there's this resentment once the teacher finds out. And I'm like, wait, first of all, I didn't know. Okay, don't blame me. Don't get mad at me. And it creates a problem. I'm not trying to disrespect any other teachers out there, okay? But then also, if it gets to the point where you just keep going back to the same source, especially if you're jumping around to different sources, that's a problem. But if you keep going back to the same source to get the answers you were looking for, then you need to really rethink who's teaching you, okay? Now, I'm not saying I'm going to take you as a student. I ain't say that, because I'm being extremely careful about that these past few years. Okay. Joanne, it's opening. Oh, the scroll. Okay. That mezuzah. Okay. Can't go wrong with that. Okay. So before I go, does anybody have any questions? And by the way, I am still doing the Queen Mother initiations, because that's part of the work that I'm doing as Ananga, because the original water priestesses were the Queen Mothers, according to the history that was set down by the late Mambo Vivian, who wrote all about the Sibyls. So that will continue. But again, discipline and respect. Okay. There was an old student that I had from years ago. And after he and his crew got their Ankh, I never heard from him again. And after Baba Heru died, I said, let me reconnect with some of my former students I haven't heard from in years. And he was just like, where have you been? It's been nice to hear from you before now. Been going through a lot of things. Like, well, wait a minute, it's not the responsibility of the teacher, mentor, initiator, godmother to be chasing after their godchildren. If anything, it's the other way around, where because I'm the elder, I'm the one that's supposed to be checked in on. And if you need any information, then call. And don't say that your teacher ghosted you. That's not how it works. And that's putting the onus on me when the question is, where have you been? I don't hear from a lot of my godchildren until they get into a real tight spot. And if you're talking about tradition, And we are still talking about tradition here to a degree. I know things change, but there are some things like respect and consistency and not biting the hand that feeds you that still stands. You know? And let me say this also. Let me end with this. I've warned people before. I'm very serious about this, and especially because of what I have seen over these many years. Do not mess with the water if you are coming and you don't have pure intention. Just don't. Don't come for a water priest or water priestess either. It's not a good idea. Water is a mirror. It reflects up all your stuff. And sometimes water can lead you to a place of delusion if you are in refusal of acceptance of your stuff. Period. The people who took that oath when they went to the water, then bounced off to whatever the next adventure was. Some people are addicted to classes, you know? Then, okay, you graduate, but then you're supposed to carry out responsibilities. These are folks who are supposed to help with the duties in the temple. Got their ankh, bounced. But if nothing else, it got me to stop and look. Were you supposed to be running a temple in the first place? For people who were not prepared, you're thinking that a certain amount of months or even a couple of years would be enough to prepare people. You can have people who can study for 20 years, but if they're not really fully committed to it, then they're not going to be prepared. Ib is heart and intention and will, is what you make up your mind to do. And also, is it congruent with where you're supposed to be? And if so, then what is distracting you? Okay. I've lived it, I can tell you. But the water never went anywhere. My being a water priestess never went anywhere. It was just a matter of getting everything realigned. So, yeah, Joanne says, it's not on demand help, right? The whole thing about when you teach, right? And then you graduate, and then, she says, water always wins. Yes, water always wins because it never really disappears. You may set a flame to it, but it's just going to turn into steam. It may appear to evaporate, but it's just changed form. And it's usually, what do we start out by saying? You never miss the water until the well runs dry. Water always wins. That sounds like a poster, Joanne. I like that. You should do something with that. It's persistent. It erodes the layers of crap in our lives. Yes, it does. It can purify and destroy. Mm-hmm. People think that being a water priestess is all about, oh, I love mermaids. I love mermaids. No, no. It's about learning all aspects of water, the mysticism associated with each aspect of water. In the Kemetic tradition, there are so many guardians, but also in the Orisha and Loa tradition, there's so many guardians. And also finding out which ones are a part of you, which ones are part of your crew. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, in learning all of that, how do you bring that knowledge to being a peacemaker and a healer on the planet? There, that point and that part. Yeah. Birdie says water will always tell that it has that it was water always tells that it was there. Grand Canyon and tree rings. True. Mm-hmm. And in African tradition, it's an African American tradition as well, because the Nanga also is part of African American spiritual traditions. We brought our African culture with us, including the Nanga tradition, which is a Bantu tradition. Um, it's said that when the water spirits are feeling disrespected, and if they are disrespected, they'll leave. They'll just dry up a water source and leave. So places like where there are canyons and the topography changed, because there used to be water there, you wonder what happened. It said when sinkholes suddenly open up, that's because water spirits have become upset and they leave. But it's also like that when you have a water priest or priestess in your life. It's said in the ATRs, for those who are familiar with the water spirits, woe unto a person who brings disrespect and malice upon a servant of the water. I've seen some things, stuff that you would see in movies from people who've been disrespectful. I've seen some things. So it goes back to the whole thing about living a clean life. Doesn't mean you have to be a nun or a monk, but it means that your heart has to be in the right place. We have learned to be sneaky, just like I was saying about people who tune in because they're just trying to get information so they could bring it back to whatever they're doing, and make it seem like they are the source and the resource, or they're bringing it back to somebody else who they sent. There are some temples out there where they operate like that, where they'll send somebody to a class to go and spy and get all the information and bring it back to them, so that way the temple leader doesn't have to look like a fool, instead of the temple leader humbling him or herself to go and directly sit in the class. That's some sneakiness, and it's foul, it's low. It's time for us to rise above that. I'm Queen Mother Imaku. I am a Nanga, who also has become an expert in the Kemetic the Kemetic mysteries. The term is Hekait. Hekait. Look it up in the Budge Dictionary and see what he calls it. And it's above the word Heka, which means magic. Joanne says, all the tourists here polluting our rivers. Now we're in a drought. Rivers aren't flowing. It's scary. So it's not about the lack of rain. It's about the pollution. That's pitiful. It's selfish. Pray for our world. In fact, in this moment, I'm going to Divine Limitless Creator. Nechir Nechiru Oshe. Bon Dieu. We pray for mercy and enlightenment, and that we will find some way to be able to heal ourselves, to save ourselves through enlightenment, through inner vision, through wisdom, through accountability, and through compassion, above all, love. Duau. Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you again this evening. I had started doing a bunch of shorts. I have some recorded. I have thumbnails from a couple of months ago that I put together for videos that I just couldn't bring myself to do, because I had to just process, and work through this transition and be very careful about what I say. Not that saying that I'm not careful, but, turning a corner. Okay. So with that, thank you, Joanne. With that, we say Meria, which means, oh, wait, you want to contact me? This is the part that I always, that's because I'm not in this for the money. So listen, if you want to contact me, you can go to my website at www.imakhu.info. If you want to book a consultation, then you can go to the website also. And also visit the store. New products are going to be entered hopefully this weekend. And if you want to book me for a speaking engagement or for some workshops, then by all means, I do make my living doing this. I don't do everything for free. Yeah, eating and paying bills is a nice little habit that I've discovered, so. And let's continue to pray for common sense to prevail with this doggone government shutdown. Praying for it to open, praying for Beset and Vesu to open the way. Papa Legba. What a mess. But let's continue to pray for the best. Meria, which means much love. Brother Deshaun, here you come now. Uteb, how are you this evening? Meria, which means much love. Heri, which means be at peace. Teni, which means to be accountable. Jebewi, which means to show mercy. And remember to apply the appropriate amount of mercy to yourself and also to the appropriate people in your life. And then also we say Resui Nechem, which means sweet dreams. And lastly, Menu Nechem, which means stay sweet. You were just getting ready to look up one of my videos. Which one? You better go look it up quick because I'm about to archive a whole bunch of a whole bunch. They'll be there for, yeah, you have to look up the archives, okay? I'm on a new tip, and so I'm trying to, I am bringing new insight, new information, you know. So you looking for any one of them? You can watch this one over, okay? You just can't catch this on the replay. I'm glad to know that you are looking for one of my videos. At least it's good to know that I missed out here. I was hoping I had COVID. I was in the house for 14 days. My doctor wanted me to stay in because of the history of lung issues that I've had, you know. And this COVID, I should let you know, ain't no kind of joke. The first day, I felt like a bear was sitting on my chest. And also, I had this spasming that was, I do have a rather extensive vocabulary. It doesn't sound like it lately, but regular words like spasm. I was having spasms, you know, just I couldn't breathe, right? So I'm sitting here, I'm being cool and calm. It's a good thing I do yoga. I'm doing my calm meditations and so forth, just like relax you so you can get some air through. And listen, nothing was working. I mean, not my asthma pump, not my pulmonary machine, nothing. It was bad. It was, and like this, all this mucus came up, and I mean, just filled myself. Oh, it was bad. It was really bad. But and then a cough on top of that. Oh God, it was horrible. It was really, really bad. So I don't know what they're talking about now. Talking about, you know, just treat it like a cold. It was not like a cold. No. And that thing knocked me out. But in the healing process, that's when I had some pretty miraculous things happen, for which I'm grateful. But take care of yourself. Okay. All right. Oh, the loop. That was an experiment. Won't be doing that again. All right. You'll have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Reswina Chem, sweet dreams. And thank you for being here.